knowledge.
Yeah.
It's communication between people.
Mm-hmm.
We had this discussion. We got all the local artists together in Kampala, in Uganda.
Yeah, when you came.
And it was
When
so
was this again?
beneficial. This was last December.
Yeah. Oh.
Less than a year ago. I was sitting at the National Theatre in Kampala with 72 Ugandan artists, producers, all discussing these very things that we were talking about. How can we change our industry?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we pay a subscription to Performing Rights Society.
Yeah.
And yet we don't see our royalties. Where does it go?
Yeah.
I won't say anything more controversial than that, but
No,
there's more to be said about that.
We have the same. Recently, a few weeks ago, I hosted the Uganda Revenue Authority, which was really taking us a serious. It's even now very active, trying to get all the musicians in position to pay their taxes and all that. But the excuse now of the musicians were, but the copyright law does not help us in any
Correct.
way, so we don't really make much money from the selling records or something like that. So then it became a chain of Uganda Revenue Authority having to work with the Performing Rights Society and having to involve. Then we thought, okay, there must be a music union. Maybe that will centralize the whole thing. So the whole place is a bit messy, but we're doing what we can. Because the truth is, the most successful musicians now in Kampala are said to be, and I said to be paying the people who pirate.
Mm.
Just please pirate my music so that it can play everywhere.
And that just
that's
feeds the
publicity.
corruption of the whole system.
Exactly. So that spoils the whole thing, because then you don't know, because from their perspective, they need publicity. They need publicity.
Yeah.
The more the music plays everywhere, the more it's accessible to the people and more affordable it is, the more they're going to be perceived big. So the question is, where do we start? From your perspective, where do you think we should start?
Well, having sat with the artists,
Yeah.
it's very clear to me that the communication between the community needs to happen.
Yeah.
If people are talking among themselves, because a lot of the people at that meeting, when I did the workshop, didn't know that the other artists weren't getting their royalties as well. Do you see what I mean?
Oh.
They're not aware of what's happening with the group. So the first thing that should happen is let's all be aware of each other's situation. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's a good sign, because in America what happened, the artists banded together, unions were formed, and they've started looking after the rights of songwriters. BMI was established, ASCAP.
Yes.
In fact, BMI, Broadcasting Music International, in America was founded because all the black musicians in America weren't getting any royalties for their records or their songs. They were started by lawyers to make sure that they would
It was by lawyers.
Well, of course, musicians or lawyers. Now, when you get a combination of those two things,
Yes.
sometimes you get a good musician who plays the trumpet or plays sax, and he's got a law degree, and he can then put things in motion. This is how people get organized, and that's just starting to happen. Maybe we'll look back historically, and that first workshop last December was like the first step towards that organization.
Yeah.
What happens if we form like a pressure group between all the artists? You know, I wanted to call it Ugandan Artist Collective, the UAC.
Mm-hmm.
This is formed as an organization, you know, and everyone works together. There's a chairperson. They could put out newsletters. They have an internet site. People can get on and say, yeah, you know, look, I wrote this song and it's used, someone else ripped it off, and at least someone has a way of saying it. Now everyone's on their own. Everyone feels lonely. So that's the first thing we have to break. Okay? Now, when that happens, then you have intelligent people petitioning the government ministers.
Yeah.
Let's have a proper Performing Rights Society. Let's have transparent accounts. Very important.
For the collections, yeah.
So when stuff is played on the radio, and let's end the corruption of paying money, hard cash money, to DJs to play the record. Because that lets even the playing field among different artists. Because at the moment, artists won't get played on the radio until those DJs are bribed.
Yeah, that's
I'm not saying that's, I have to be careful what I say, because I'm not saying that's across the board, but in many cases, and this is what I heard at the workshop.
Yeah.
this is direct feedback I'm getting back from the Ugandan artists. So you see, information is the first step, action's the second step, and then petitioning and standing in the doorsteps of whatever government ministry there is and saying, we want this done. If people don't do it, you start raising placards and meeting and making a fuss. And then they say, okay, we'll do something, because they don't want to have they don't want to have that kind of notice.
I hope and really really hope that we first of all realize how messed up we are or where we are, because the challenge, one of the biggest challenges, is that some of the musicians are comfortable.
I know.
Because what they expect before they get into the industry, what they expected was that. In fact, it may even be more than what they expected. So they prefer to have it that way. The culture of having a lot of revenue from records is something that they have put away. You know, most of them have settled that, okay, we'll use the records for publicity, but then we'll earn from performances.
Absolutely.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then we have too many classes, I would say, if I'm to use that word, categories of audiences. And then, of course, that's created by the different categories of artists. So you find that the artists that can't even perform, but really, and then they will get on to perform with just a CD. You know, that's true.
Playback, it's called playback, yeah.
No, that's a backing track.
Okay.
Playback
is when you mime.
Playback is acceptable to me to a degree, where you just play the track and then you sing, really sing. But now what happens is you play a CD of the song. Everything is in there. And then you perform, and this person is paid to perform. You know, so you kind of feel like, who is going to let them know that that's not right? Because then if you say it, then you seem like you know. And then the painful thing is that people are happy with that. You see, they paid. It's their business. I paid for her to perform. All I want her to do is get there and perform, and she performed. So when you come and do the right thing, then you don't seem. So you understand that. So there's a lot of education that actually needs to happen, not only for musicians but also to the audience, to try to rectify that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's absolutely right. That's what I mean by awareness. That people become aware of these issues and the educational element becomes important. But if I could go back just a little bit on one other point, you said that some people are comfortable in the business. They like it the way it is. What is the result of this? The result of this is new talent has difficulty coming up. All right?
Yeah.
So what happened in Britain as well and in UK is people get comfortable with a certain kind of music. They're getting revenue, and they don't like the newcomers. Okay? And every time that happens, you see social change. In Britain, it happened because they would not play any of the Motown music. So pirate radio stations happened. There was a huge uproar in Parliament. These pirate radio stations were broadcasting this great music. The BBC lost all their listeners. Radio Caroline had more listeners than the whole BBC combined. And then they started Radio 1. You see, so unless you get the Mavericks coming in and shaking the system up, you have trouble for new talent coming up and expressing itself. Somehow in the arts, it's always it's a quality of the comfortable establishment to want to keep the status quo, and yet we operate, you and I, in one of the most dynamic and changing fields of any arts. Music, it's always evolving, always changing. That's one of the things I love about it. It fuses. Reggae comes in, punk comes in, rock comes in, African comes in. I mean, we'll talk about that too, because African is yet to really come in the way it should. It could have. You see, it took how many 150 years to come through the American slave system and get expressed through Motown music.
Yes, you were mentioning about that.
Yeah. Now, how long will it take for it to come back into mainstream? I mean, Akon's starting. Many people are starting. Even Lionel Richie had that all night long. He had a middle chant with the Swahili, the key Swahili hooks and everything. When people hear it, of course there are bands like Asabisa, When people hear this music, they love it. They just love the energy and the sunshine of the music.
My question has always been, what happened to our African music? I mean, when you hear it, you hear all these rhythms and the rich culture that we can export. But of course, the limitations, and I don't know whether they're just excuses, but I hate to think of them as excuses. But we are limited in the way we package it in order to be accepted as an export internationally, because the levels and quality of excellence, it's a very huge difference, and we're doing our best to fill that gap. And just to go a bit, one of the things that I feel, and one of the reasons I started this TV show, is because I want to feel responsible for the time that I am something on the music industry. I want to contribute for the sake of the next generation. That I talked about it, even though maybe something was not done about it, but I mentioned something about it for the sake of the next. So someone will just have to pick it up from there. But regarding the music, the African music, trying to get it back, you have been influential in different. By the way, you say, I'm sorry, I'm up and down. You mentioned about the movies that you've scored for, but then you didn't mention one of the ones that you had told me before we got here. Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, Goblet of Fire. I'm doing a key sitar sequence on it. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is a Johnny Depp movie.
Yeah.
The 3 Indian music scenes, I completely played all my Indian instruments and gave the flavor. There's a Madonna film, Next Best Thing.
Madonna.
Yeah, and there's a film, Warner Brothers film called A Little Princess. I'm trying to remember now. Plus the Guru.